The Mannin Line with Andy Wint.
Pastor Mike, good afternoon. The Mannin Line's open line between now and 1 o'clock, so the floor's yours, whatever's on your mind. Could be the government conference. Did you make it to the government conference yesterday or perhaps this morning? Any ideas what they're up to? Hello, Norman. I've noted what he said. There are some sonic boom sounds going on in the north at the moment. Is this true? Sonic booms? They happened years and years ago, but can't remember what they were. Northern Norman in the north. There are some sonic booms in the north. If you can tell me what it is, then we'd appreciate it. I went to the government conference yesterday, says Eric. Only 2 disabled parking spaces. One was taken by a disabled parker, the other by a non-disabled parker. Does anybody ever check these things? Only 2 disabled parking spaces at the Comis. Crikey, there's a lot of parking space there, obviously, which most times isn't used. But thanks for that. Thanks for alerting us to that. And some messages in yesterday. We were talking about shingles and the shingles vaccine and chickenpox and what have you. I got a message in from, this was from, it was Ronnie. That's it. Thank you, Ronnie. A lady, Ronnie, with an I, who just says, but also people should be watching out for measles, because measles is spreading across, and this was reported yesterday. Vaccination levels over in the UK hit their lowest level since 2011. NHS England published statistics on childhood vaccination coverage there from last year. The data shows overall coverage amongst children stands at 89.4%, so bluntly, 9 out of 10. With the UK NHS warning diseases like measles spread very quickly. No vaccine met the target needed to ensure diseases can't spread among young people. So obviously, they say that of England's 5-year-olds, 91.9% have received only 1 dose of the MMR. That's measles, mumps and rubella. Rubella's scarlet fever, isn't it? So just 1 dose of the MMR, the lowest level since 2010/11. 83.9% had both doses, the lowest level since 2009-10. And I just wonder, if you're a parent or guardian, what's your feeling on this? Is there much measles around at the moment? Obviously, it's the start of the academic year, so all the immune systems will be mixing and the germs are going to be mixing. We've asked Public Health for an update on Manx children. We're awaiting those figures, but apparently they are making a concerted effort to amplify the signs and the symptoms as well, and circulating advice on social media. And to parents, letters have been sent from some schools across the Isle of Man. So, any thoughts on that? Text, email, call, WhatsApp. And the air traffic control story highlights the ignorance, says an anonymous subscriber. This is 653, our correspondent, doesn't sign it. The ignorance of the general public regarding the running of complex departments. The number of posts claiming that controllers should just carry on working past their allotted hours was ridiculous. Let the experts get on with running the departments with exactly what they need, says 653. Well, bear in mind, we don't have enough. 653, if you could tell us what they do need, what do they need? I mean, more air traffic controllers, but somebody made the point a couple of weeks ago that apparently the boss of air traffic control doesn't have a civilian air traffic control license and consequently can't jump into the seat. Now, hitherto, apparently, previous air traffic bosses did have a civilian qualification and could jump into the seat. So they have a boss who can't do the job because he doesn't have the requisite license. So somebody somewhere has made the decision that, you know, we obviously don't have enough air traffic controllers, and air traffic controllers have been how can I put this, coming and going over the recent years. Now, whether or not that's down to what's been said on social media. But, well, any thoughts on this? Savings of £10 million is like me saving £10. The island needs to make savings of £50 to £100 million, says Bob. Otherwise, this is going to be the same as usual. The government's looking for £10 million in savings, says Roger. Maybe they should look at overspend on capital projects rather than tackling departmental budgets. Kind regards. Thank you, Roger. Good to hear from you. Norma. Thank you, Norma. Sent a note in just to say everybody mentions the overspends, and typically with Manx Care, but also we've got the fact that the Douglas Promenade went over budget. We've got the fact it went over budget in that they had to take the budget from the horse trams and use it for something else. Consequently, the horse trams aren't finished. So you could say that's an overspend on Douglas Promenade. We've got the Liverpool landing stage. And Norma says also, do you remember that £4 million that was spent compensating the lady who lost her job over COVID? Over that circumstance? That went very quiet, says Norma. And David's on now. Hi, David.
I hope she hasn't got an Isle of Man bank account anyway. I'll leave it at that. I want to report the latest conversation up at the Mount Murray there, or whatever you call it now, from Jane Poole-Wilson, the Minister for Home Affairs, which is good. And I think we'll get credit from the Mannin Line, and people have come on. She's going to bring forward face recognition at the airport. And the other thing was, which was a good announcement, was too, number plate recognition, which I'm sure people will agree, those tools in the box for the police and other services would be great. You know, when people are coming, we don't. When they're not saying they're going to photograph everybody, it's just it'll identify the people who we don't want on the island.
I mean, this is it. Lots of people say that, you know, too much of this is like a sort of police state, and other people say, well, if you're not doing anything wrong, it doesn't matter.
Well, when I went to the conference this morning early, do you know how many English-plated vehicles, which were all Mercedes and big high-quality cars, on English plates? And I'm sure they're not here on holiday. They probably went to the conference anyway. Why don't the DOI put a charge? You're bringing a car from England or whatever to the Isle of Man. You get charged 50 quid. And then you get that 50 quid back when your test goes through. Because we don't know now whether these people with cars that come to the island or trucks or whatever. Yeah. I know where the truck in Onken, I'm not persecuting the person, but he's been there 7 months running around on English plates, no tax disc. So us, as a community, are losing out. So
what's the limit now? If you bring a car over with UK plates, how long do you have?
It's one of those things, there's no definitive date. It's as soon as practicable.
Right.
Which could be, nobody's ever defined that particular word. It may be in a dictionary somewhere, or somebody may come on and say...
Well, you would think, wouldn't you? I mean, if somebody's coming over here to live and work and they bring a car with a UK plate, they should say whether it's 3 months or maximum 6 months, but just get it done by a certain time rather than, you know, whenever you can.
Yeah, and that also applies to camper vans as well. On the Summerland site there's a huge one there. I wonder who's paying the rent on that.
On the Summerland site?
Yeah, look at the Summerland site there now, and the number of heavy goods vehicles that are parked there. If the government is so strapped for money, why did they put up a car park there and start charging?
I wonder. Anyway, what's the latest on the bus stops?
Oh, I've got good news.
Oh, crikey.
I'm just waiting to share it because, you know, to be fair to civil servants too, you know, I never dropped them in it. Well, I never named them anyway. But on this particular one, I've got to get permission to say, can I transport it or push the email on? Because he didn't include you in it. Do you know what I mean? When I do a complaint and I include you as the presenter for the Mannin Line, I get a response. But this time, the response has come back and you're not there.
Oh, no.
be fair with the law. I don't want to cross the law. Nobody wants to cross the law, do they? I've got to get permission from the civil servant who wrote the email to say, can I transmit that to the general public? And the other thing, can I just ask as well, Andy, too? Chris Thomas this morning, I think he was totally wrong to say that everything should be announced in Tynwald or the Keys. The general public want to hear the ministers and want to hear the speeches that happened today. And at the tea break times, you can talk to Alf Cannon, Jane Poole-Wilson, some of the other ministers that are there. Direct questions to them.
And that's again, that's one of the beauties of the Isle of Man. And maybe people who've just come here don't quite understand that. We are close to our politicians. In other jurisdictions, they're very remote. They've got a big problem in England with people disengaging from politics. Now, we've never had that issue on the Isle of Man. As you say, you can see the politicians in the street. You can call them up. You can write to them. You can chat to them. You can phone them.
We know where they live as well.
Yeah.
The other thing, bit of goodness as well. The new CEO was there too. I can't remember his name. I never got a card from him. He was a top class. But as soon as I find out who he is, you need to get this guy on.
Andy Ralphs is his name. Andy Ralphs.
That's the guy. You need to have an open invitation. Obviously, he couldn't answer political questions because that's the politicians. But he gave a good rounded view of where we're going in the next 10 years.
Okay.
All right?
All right, good to hear from you. Cheers now, good to hear from you. And Vivian's with us now. Hello, Vivian.
Hello, Andy. You were talking yesterday and to start off today about the shingles injections.
Yeah.
I was at the doctor, I can't even remember what I went for, and she said to me, have you had a shingles jab? And I said, no. Would you like one? I said, yes, please. And this must have been the end of September, beginning of October.
Right, and which GP is this?
That was in Ramsey.
Right, okay. And so end of September, beginning of October?
Yes. And then people have been told since then they're not getting them. But I've had mine, so I'm saying thank you very much.
Oh, right, jolly good, okay. All right, thanks, Vivian.
Bye.
Good to hear from you. It seems that Michelle Haywood hasn't cottoned on to Comyn becoming a political party and holding its annual conference, says G. Is that what it is? Well, it's the government conference, isn't it? But G frames it in that way. And, of course, the government will be sort of damned if they do and damned if they don't. It's now, I mean, it is a public forum. You can go, you can pitch up to the Comis today and see it all happening, see the people taking the floor. So they are telling us everything. Obviously, the media are there. We're there with microphones to find out what's what. Anyway, that's your thoughts. Government are looking to have £10 million in savings. What about the overspends on capital projects rather than tackling departmental budgets, says Roger. Here's a note in that just says regarding air traffic control, a concerned resident on 142, a senior management from the best UK-based airline was at a meeting yesterday with senior managers from Loganair. Subject of air traffic control on the Isle of Man was mentioned, to which Loganair senior management stated that they've been told by the Isle of Man government to tell their pilots not to mention Isle of Man air traffic control in any of their to any of their PAs, i.e. gone for a tea break. When Loganair were asked what happens at other airports of a similar size to the Isle of Man, the answer was that air traffic control would delay their break until the aircraft were cleared. Thank you, 142. We don't know, do we? Because we get versions from different people. I mean, obviously, air traffic control is watertight on regulations and simply has to be watertight on regulations. To contravene air traffic regulations is an indictable offence. You can't muck around with that, and consequently they all have to be ship-shape, Bristol fashion and fully alert, so they do have to have brakes. It's a shame they call them fatigue brakes, because it does sound a lot too much like tea breaks, doesn't it? Anyway, I see the planning departments ignore the views of the people in the West over that new estate, says 867. This is the estate that's happening in Peel. Martin says, Martin 927, the DOI just bought 10 new bin wagons. The island-wide consultation on waste collection hasn't even closed yet, but they've already bought the wagons. It may have been that stage of the business cycle, Martin, we don't quite know. What are they doing with the old ones? That's what I'd like to know. Who wants a second-hand bin wagon? I came through Liverpool, says 538, on the Seacat Friday evening. I'm still amazed you can turn up with no ID and sail to the Isle of Man. Number plate and face recognition is welcomed by me, says Tony. All figures seem to show crime is decreasing on the Isle of Man. This is Texter 284. Can the Home Affairs Minister tell us why we're deploying armed police to patrol the streets? The conference also had an armed police presence. What's changed to warrant all of these armed deployments? Is this overkill? Says 284. Again, it splits opinion as to whether or not our police should be armed. I mean, bearing in mind there have always been arms available. There have always been firearms available to police for many, many years. I mean, 50, 60, 70 years. But they had to get signed out in the old days. So whether or not we should have armed police, again, is it overkill, or are we being prepared? A stitch in time and all that. Any thoughts? Text, email, call, WhatsApp. And 109 says, if you're taking your car to the UK, they should charge Manx-plated vehicles because they're not MOT'd. Also, the steam packet already charge £400 to bring a car over. And the Isle of Man wants tourism, says 109. Charles, well, the government talks about savings. They've stopped the bus to the Sound to save a few bob, but they continue to run the Village Connect service in the north at a huge loss. Well, we don't know the figures for it, Charles, but we'll take your word for it. Well, that suits me because I get a bus on my own from Andros into Ramsey on a Monday night, returning when I call later on for free on my pensioner's card. I'm the only person on the bus on the Village Connect service. It's a free taxi, says Charles. Well, you're home free, aren't you? But no, that's a good point taken. Thank you to Bonzo, who says the sonic booms in the north may well be from RAF Typhoons, tasked on a quick reaction alert to intercept Russian military aircraft within our air defence identification zone, the UK ADIZ. Russians have recently finished a major military exercise. In particular circumstances, the Typhoons are allowed to go supersonic near populated areas, generating booms. I personally experienced this a few years ago in Port St Mary, which initially thought it was explosives being carried for quarrying, but was later confirmed as an intercept off the west coast of Ireland. Thanks for the information, Bonzo. Tony B's with us now. Hi, Tony.
How you doing, Andy?
Very well.
Everything all right?
Yeah, so it's obviously at Ramsey, it's the end of September.
Well, I don't know where that came from because I've just spoken to the practice manager in Ramsey.
Yeah.
And they haven't done any appointments. And they haven't been giving out shingles vaccines for a year.
So what do they say?
That came directly from there. I went to see them.
Have they got a timetable as to when it's going to happen?
No. The update is, and I believe Manx Gas has done their paperwork. Now, I started this long trip with Laurie Hooper in March. And it went, oh, yeah, well, it doesn't sound right. Oh, it is right. After all, they haven't done their paperwork yet. They've got to do the GCVI, whatever it is, paperwork, so that we can do it, which has taken over 6 months. They now apparently have got that done. That's wonderful. And we will shortly be getting vaccines, according to Laurie Hooper, but I think he's being told, let's say, that the information he's getting is not 100% accurate from Manx Gas. Because he told me that a month ago. I sent you the email. So, in the meantime, they hadn't done the paperwork right, so they had to redo it. But the bottom line is that we still haven't got vaccine on the island. We still haven't got a plan. And once again, Manx Care is bogged down because it's over-bureaucratic, like most of our systems in the Isle of Man. And they're over-bureaucratic because we've got too many people shuffling paper and pushing pens and checking paper clips. We don't get things done.
Well, I mean, Tony, can you explain this to me then? Why do bureaucrats and administrators, why do they seem to reproduce? Why do they seem to, increase all the time? If things were done previously and done to a decent standard, why? I mean, I'm not a bureaucrat by nature, so why do you need more people? Is it just being risk averse? What is it?
Right, if you go back to somebody else who made this comment, the people who were in charge of Manx Care, which wasn't Manx Care, it was one of the departments, I can't remember which one. But anyway, they were in charge and it was an absolute mess, a disaster. So they got somebody in to ask them, OK, what should we do about this? And the answer was, oh, well, I'm a bureaucrat, so you need to make this very bureaucratic. And that's what happened. He sent a report in and said you need to separate you, who are making political decisions, from the people who are going to do the job, and that way it'll make it more efficient. And to do that, you're going to have a lot more people and spend a lot more money, which is why Laurie Hooper keeps saying it's underfunded. But the answer is that they didn't fix the problems at the original place, they passed them on. And that is atypical of any company that's trying to shift blame. So the original department was trying to shift blame, get it out of my area. It's not my problem, it's somebody else's problem. And that is what happens when you go and ask a bureaucratic person, or somebody who worked in the civil service, and Bonzo can tell you that in the civil service it's got to be done a certain way. And that way is, well, let's do it this way, and we'll double check it 3 times, and then we'll shuffle it somewhere, and then we'll put it on file, and then somebody will have to go to a committee and decide what's the order we should do this in. There's not a reason why it should be like that. We've allowed it to become like that. And civil servants can be very efficient if they're told to be. But the problem is they're not getting told to be efficient. What they're doing is making up the rules themselves.
When Alan Bell left office as Chief Minister, he'd reduced the size of government considerably. And then it just carried on growing. I know COVID came in the meantime, but if Mr. Bell could do it back then, what's stopping them nowadays?
Because how do you turn around a super tanker? That's what they've got. Because if you look at it, you've got more people, and how are you going to reduce those people when the boss who's in charge of them doesn't want them reduced? Because the more people they've got, the more they can have delegates. In other words, I can have somebody working for me, and then the person who's working for them thinks they can have somebody working for them, and effectively nobody does any work because the person at the top wants to delegate everything, because they've been told that's what you should do.
And no head of any department really wants to ask for less money next year. If you cut your budget, they think, well, what have you been up to? But that's effectively what we're asking them. We're asking government to cut its budget to employ fewer people.
Well, I would say not cut the budget. What I'd say is that they should have certain targets, which are X, Y, and Z. If they don't meet those targets, next year their budget will go down 10%. And also their ability to hire people will be removed. They won't be allowed to hire anybody. Because all you're going to do if you hire more people is make the whole problem bigger. If you worked in business, you would not do what they're doing. You'd do exactly the opposite. You look at where the problems are and you address those problems. If you need to put more resources into those problems to fix them, that's fine. But what we're doing is creating more boards, more non-executive directors, more people in charge of things, and more quangos and more committees.
I just wonder whether, because
announcements that are exactly the same.
But it doesn't really impress the public, doesn't it? I mean, the person in the street's not impressed by having more bureaucrats. They just like to get things done.
Correct. But the problem is we've now overcompensated for something that was, oh, you can't do this, you can't do that, you're not allowed to do that. Oh, okay, air traffic controllers. I will guarantee you, if you go and research within the law on air traffic controllers, they will have dispensations. The fact that you are employing somebody who is in charge of that at the airport, who cannot be an air traffic controller or isn't an air traffic controller, immediately defeats the object of having him. Who approved him to be the new air traffic control boss? Now, I'm not against the person, but if the person's been in seat, then he can get a conversion. You can go from basically managing fighter jets and aircraft and bombers in the RAF. You can go across, you can get a conversion course which will move you into domestic traffic. And if you go back in history, the US shut down their whole, because of air traffic control, they shut them all down and put military personnel in charge.
Oh, I remember that was Ronald Reagan, wasn't it?
I can't remember who it was, but somebody...
It was Reagan who closed it down.
They wanted to go on strike and they were threatening, so they said, OK, you're all out of a job, bye. And the end result was he put air traffic controllers in place from the military. Now, obviously, people who are in that position think they have power to control things. And if you call their bluff, then all of a sudden it's very feasible to do it differently. Now, I don't think anybody wants to put their head above the parapet is one of the problems we've got. And Alf Cannon is saying, well, something's got to happen. Well, yeah, don't tell me something's got to happen. We all know that. We've been saying that for a year. What needs to happen is you do something. But have you heard anything that is going to be done?
No.
No.
All they've said is, all Mr. Cobb said was, warn people not to take the mickey out of air traffic controllers on social media.
Well, don't get me wrong, but what do they expect? What do the board of Manx Care expect when their performance is so appalling? You know, nothing in Manx Care is joined up. Nothing. Nothing is easy to do. Everything is driven by administration. Fill in this bit of paper. I want you to fill this form in. How easy is it? Oh, it's not. But don't worry, we've got a special helpline you can apply for. And there a person will go walk you through the form. The issue is, why have we got this complicated 60-page form? And the answer is because somebody sat in an office somewhere and designed it. Like, it just goes on and on and on. And it's self-fulfilling. If you don't put your hand in and stop it moving and say, OK, enough's enough, we've got to stop this, what is the role of Manx Care? To look after people. What is it doing? It's forming its own little administration, and it's not achieving anything. And that's why it needs to be removed completely and started all over again, and go back to the people who made the mess to start with and say, OK, it's all back to you now. You need to fix this, or you're going to get fired. We're going to have to dismantle everything. OK, all right. And I'm sorry, I don't think Alf Cannon's got the ability to do it.
All right. OK, Tony, we appreciate it.
Hooper is being told the truth. I think a lot of stuff is being lied about.
OK. All right, Tony, good to hear from you.
You take care. Bye.
By 25-1, Island Energy Group's got a new interim chief exec, what used to be called Manx Gas, announced yesterday that Jo Cox was leaving her post to pursue new opportunities. She's been there since 2021, 3 years. Aidan Baglow, who had been managing director of Manx Gas before it was rebranded IOM Energy, part of the Islands Energy Group, Aidan's taken over as interim chief exec with immediate effect. He joined Manx Gas in 2008 and is based on the Isle of Man. So Islands Energy Group, previously Manx Gas, has a new interim chief exec.
We interrupt this broadcast to inform all our listeners about the huge range of bathrooms and showers on display at Pacesetter. Yes, you all know that Pacesetter is known as the island's largest tile store, but I'm here to tell you that their bathroom displays are truly inspirational. Visit Pacesetter on Harris Terrace, where you'll discover a fabulous collection of stylish bathrooms. There's something to suit everyone, with design available. pace setter bathrooms and showers to show off about.
Give your home a facelift with Manx Glass and Glazing, whether choosing aluminium or UPVC in traditional or contemporary styles. You can be sure of excellent workmanship and guarantees. Members of Construction Isle of Man and family run for over 30 years, Manx Glass and Glazing are committed to the local community, and they invest in future generations through their apprenticeship scheme. Visit the impressive showroom on Snugborough Trading Estate. Trust Manx Glass and Glazing, quality and style since 1986.
Oh, blowing a hoolie out there.
Come in for a bravig by the fire. Just stocked up at Hearth. Never been so warm.
Who's that? Hearth?
Aye, they've got kiln-dried hardwood for me log burner, Colombian coal and smokeless ovals for the open fire, kindling and firelighters, all delivered. Great value too.
All goes up the chimney anyway, so I pay more. I'll be giving Hearth a call.
Check their website as well. Just order and they deliver.
For all your fire fuel needs, call Hearth on 560 577 or visit hearth.co.com.
Hello. On this evening's Spotlight, it's Panto time. Almost. Rehearsals are well underway. Oh, no, they're not. Now that she's had time to catch her breath, we catch up with the new bard, Jordan Kenyuk, and a piano series at the Erin Arts Centre. Spotlight, handcrafted by those lovelies at the Isle of Man Arts Council and presented by me, H. This evening, just after 5:30, and available as a podcast straight after broadcast by the Manx Radio website or your favourite podcast provider. Spotlight, a ray of creative sunshine.
The Mannin Line with Andy Wint.
22 minutes before 1. It's Wednesday, which means it's 60th anniversary Kelly's Eye. And today, Peter Kelly and David Callister in Castle Street visiting the building of a once popular shoe shop with origins in the late 1800s. That's on today on After Mannin Line. And Howard's with us now. Hi, Howard.
Hello, Andy. Just as a curiosity from that announcement, it wouldn't be Bignells, Kermode and Bignells.
I think it may be.
It goes back memories. When I was at school, Kermode and Bignells, they used to deliver the shoes to the clients around Douglas, and I used to do it on my bicycle. 27 and 6 a week. When I was at school, it was after school, and I used to do it then. Mr. Bignell was a gentleman, but I'll leave that to the listeners afterwards. I won't spoil it. But what I was, a couple of things. I used to work many years ago with a chap, and he used to have the phrase PODS, P-O-D-S, and he used to say that was plan, organise, delegate, and supervise. And smiling afterwards, he said, if I've got to work, I'm not doing my job properly. And that just sums up what you were talking about, the increase in civil servants. There are people there with the same attitude, plan, organise, and then delegate to somebody else, and then supervise. In other words, sit at your desk and watch what's going on, that's all. So they should be what we used to term as a working foreman. And they should be able to do the jobs that they're telling people to do. For anybody to come into a position and go into the employed people that they're there and have been doing a job for many, many years successfully, and then come in to tell them how to do it and not be able to do the job themselves is farcical. But what I was coming on for, and I said to Howard, a question that needs to be asked to the government, or the DOI in particular, what warranty, guarantee, or returns can they claim against the company that rebuilt the promenade? Because you drive along there now from Summerhill End right through to, where the Lloyds Bank is at the sea terminal end, all or a lot of the crossings where they've been built with brick, these artificial bricks reconstituted, and a lot of those at various places along the promenade are collapsing. Now, we only need to get a severe winter with water getting into these items, then freezing. It's going to disturb all underneath and lift them. And as I said to Howard, it took 70 years for the old promenade to get in the state it was in. It's only taken 3 years for this one to get into a similar state, and if, as I say, we have a severe winter, frost and ice, it's going to destroy that promenade in a very short period of time. The company that done it will say, well, that's nature, but it's bad workmanship to start with. Because, as I say, it was a fortnight ago, I was down at the church on the promenade, and at the door, you could see the DOI, the men were out there, repairing the pavements, the block pavements, brushing sand into them, of all things. And that's not going to last 5 minutes when you get a decent bit of rain. But there must be some sort of warranty. Even house builders give a 10-year warranty. Excuse me. But what sort of warranty has been given on this promenade for the work that's been done?
I think they're still working through the snagging list, Howard, at the moment. I don't think it's entirely finished.
Well, I could be wrong, but I think they said it had been signed over. If that's the case, then it's the responsibility of the DOI.
Right.
But if the snagging is being done by the company that built it, or rebuilt the promenade, then why are the highway board, the DOI down there, repairing pavements?
But I mean, do you think the promenade looks finished?
It looks a disgrace. It does not look finished by any means, and it obviously isn't finished. So you come up by the Jubilee clock, just come past the Jubilee clock to go along towards towards the north, going north on that lane.
Yeah.
The concrete blocks are collapsing there. There's 2 channels there now where you run the car wheels up. And we have a similar situation where you come out of by the railway station and come across to go onto the North Quay. The high-rise areas, the walkway areas, they don't collapsing at all. So the roads and the pavements, etc., are not going to last very much longer, particularly with the traffic that's on the roads now. The larger wagons, okay, the weight distribution's all worked out, but these paving slabs, and they are only blocks, and you look at them, they've already replaced some of the black ones on the promenade with white ones in the zebra crossings. So it'd be an interesting thing for the DOI minister to give the public who are paying for this some reassurance that there is a guarantee behind the workmanship.
Okay, all right. It'd be nice to know, wouldn't it, Howard?
It would, yeah. Well, we are the payers, we are the ratepayers, taxpayers, and if you've got a faulty item from any business, they would either give you a refund or they would replace it.
Okay, all right. Appreciate that, Howard.
Take care.
Cheers.
Bye
now. 16 minutes before 1. This coming Friday, Tim Johnston is here. Tim Johnston, the MHK Enterprise Minister at the Department for Enterprise. He's here with his Chief Officer, Mark Lewin. So we'll be talking about what Enterprise does. Obviously, they've got finance in there, digital Isle of Man, locate Isle of Man, visit Isle of Man. They're all in there getting business to the Isle of Man. And David Ashford's on next Tuesday. David Ashford is on Chair of Housing and Communities Board. So the vexed question of housing on the Isle of Man, where to build the houses, who's going to buy the houses, how many will be affordable. David Ashford, MHK, next Tuesday. And Alfred Cannon, MHK, Chief Minister's on a week on Friday the 27th. Also, that following Tuesday, Deborah Heather and Ranald Caldwell, Chief Exec and Chair of Visit Isle of Man, will be in. So we'll be touching a lot on tourism. First of all, with Tim Johnson and Mark Lewin on Friday, but other things as well. But certainly on Tuesday, the 1st of October, Ranald Caldwell and Deborah Heather from Visit Isle of Man. We've been talking about police. The Chief Constable's on at the end of October, Monday 28th. Russ Foster will be on if you want to talk to him. In answer to your question, how long can a UK vehicle be allowed here with a non-Manx registration? The government website says visitors to the Isle of Man, including short-term employment, driving a vehicle registered other than in the Isle of Man, can do so for 12 months. Beyond this, the vehicle must be registered in the Isle of Man. So the government website says 12 months. When the winter weather sets in, says Texter 828, and there'll be several days when Manxmen won't be able to access Heysham. Do you think we'll see her go to Liverpool with passengers and a separate freight service with the Arrow or the Ben to Heysham? Well, they haven't said, but presumably as the Ben McCree is being kept on standby, I understand the Arrow is out on charter. She's always out on charter when she's not here, so they'll be earning some money off the Arrow. But we've not heard. But then again, as you say, they can't discharge freight at Liverpool, so something will have to go to Heysham. Otherwise, there'll be no sandwiches. The police may turn out armed more these days. So what's going to happen, says Alan. The new chief constable has the police officers walking round like we live in a major city like Manchester or Liverpool or London. They have the easiest job of all police forces. Well, you would say that the fact that they've got an easy job could be that they're doing it properly. But then again, I won't say that on behalf of the chief constable. He'll be here at the end of October. Anyway, it's 12 months, if you needed to know. 12 months somebody can drive around on non-Manx plates. I've seen a telehandler with English plates for well over a year now. And it's the same farmer that drives a 4x4 with no tax as well. Andrea, please, you need to do something about that. And again, somebody's saying it's 6 months. Well, apparently it's 12 months now. People can come over on the boat without checks. So what about people on terrorist watch lists? It's a serious question, says Roy B. Well, if somebody is presumably on a terrorist watch list in the UK, they are being watched, and somebody would spot if they're coming to the Isle of Man.
Island Hearing Limited, your local hearing care specialist since 2009, with branches in Port Erin and Ramsey. We provide the very latest hearing aid technology available, which you can try at home, with excellent aftercare and a wax removal service available using microsuction. Give us a ring on 830 722 or visit Island Hearing at One Station Road, Port Erin. We're happy to help. Island Hearing, always listening.
The Ramsey Garden Centre sale is now on, featuring a huge range of garden items at vastly reduced prices. Don't delay. Grab a garden bargain now. There has never been a better time to visit Ramsey Garden Centre. Open 7 days a week on Albert Road, Ramsey.
I've just called the Guernsey Bank, Skipton International, about our savings.
And did you get a helpful robot?
No. At Skipton International, you speak to a very helpful, real person.
That's refreshing these days.
Well, that's why I chose them, for the perfect combination of personal customer service and some of the best savings rates. All by calling 01481 730 730 or visit skiptoninternational.com.
Skipton International is licensed to take deposits by the Guernsey Financial Services Commission and is a participant in the Guernsey Banking Deposit Compensation Scheme. Details at dcs.gg. Terms and conditions apply.
Heating oil for homes, powering farms and businesses, keeping you moving with petrol stations across the island. Ellen Mannin Fuels. Call us on 844000.
Coming up, we have another winning weekend here on Manx Radio. And this time, we're giving you the chance to win £200 to spend in-store at B&B Furniture. All you have to do is listen out for a winning question, which we'll ask on air right across the weekend. And once you've heard it, text your answer to 166 177. B&B Furniture is celebrating over 45 years of serving the island with lots of anniversary offers. And to mark 30 years in their purpose-built store, they're offering up to 30% off selected items. Make this your winning weekend with B&B Furniture and your nation station Manx Radio.
The Mannin Line with Andy Wint.
I sent you a WhatsApp regarding the rising insurance costs for renewables. People and government should take this into account before making the wrong decision about net zero. Which particular bit about net zero, to Crystal? You can't be saying that people with degrees are wrong because they're far more educated than us, says Des. We're not even in their pay grade. We need more of them to sort the Isle of Man out. You're not being sarcastic, are you, Des? And Billy says that sonic boom in the north was Belly the plumber dropping his wallet. Well, apparently it wasn't Belly the plumber. It's MOD Esmeals in Cumbria, says Chris in London. They often conduct firing tests. Looking at their webpage, they're testing all this week. It's MOD Esmeals in Cumbria. That's what the big bangs are, not Belly the plumber. Following on from the topic of vacancies in the Isle of Man, this morning there are 1,001 vacancies listed on the job centre. 601 are agencies and many are duplicated even within a single agency, says 841. Take a look at the website then for the job centre. Is this so? So when they talk about lots of vacancies, if they're being multiplied, obviously it's not a correct number. You would imagine that they'd be able to get the correct number. Remember when a team of criminals came to the Isle of Man carrying out robberies? I don't think they were ever caught. No, I think you're quite right. It's a few years ago, wasn't it? Was it 5-6 odd years ago when there was a spate of them happening? This is 454, anonymous 454. Why do you feel the need to be flippant about air traffic control being harassed online for doing their job? Then again, you allow callers to say anything. Well, it is an opinion show, 4-5. I don't know whether you caught that. Regardless of how baseless or derogatory their comments are. No doubt this comment won't be broadcast. I suppose it hasn't been. But can't do anything about online. Sorry, Mannin Line has got responsibility for areas, but sadly we're not in charge of Twitter or Facebook or Instagram or anything like that. Take it up with them. I'm sure they'll be able to help you. I understand air traffic controllers in London having strict rules. They have more planes in 2 hours than we have all day, probably more than in 1 hour. So I can understand those rules there. And more people telling me about S-meals in Cumbria, and that's where the big bangs are coming from. Misinformation. You must register as soon as practicable if you're resident on the Isle of Man, says 75. Misinformation about what are we talking about? The sonic boom, more on that. Playing devil's advocate regarding the new development, says this correspondent, John. If building companies left the Isle of Man, it would fall on the government to build. And of course, then that cost will be met by the taxpayer if building companies left the Isle of Man.
When the Mannin Line's not on air, call Manx Radio to leave your opinion for broadcast on 682 631.
And don't forget, as I said, this coming Friday, Tim Johnston is here.
Hello there, this is Dr. Alex Allinson, Treasury Minister, and I'd really like to wish Manx Radio a very happy 60th birthday. Well done.
Oh, and just a quick word, those consultations asking for your opinion on a wide range of employment rights. Now, remember, they finish in October, so if you've got something to say, then you need to go to gov.im. I find there's a series of consultations covering parental rights, caring rights, annual leave and rest breaks, and trade union legislation. Now, they're on the consultation hub at gov.im, and they follow on from previous consultations and reforms. It's part of the Island Plan to deliver reforms on employment legislation on the Isle of Man, ensuring we're aligned with international standards, but we're competitive and attractive to work. So it's parental and caring rights, annual leave, conduct of employment agencies, trade union legislation, workers and employees' rights, unfair dismissal, qualifying periods, and the minimum wages. That's at gov.im. That's it. Thanks to Howie on the phones today.
WINT. 60 years serving you as the nation's station. This is Manx Radio.
Kelly's Eye, brought to you by Ellis Brown Architects.
Peter, what's Kelly's Eye looking at today?
A depressing sight today, David. I suppose the end of an era. I'm looking at a sign that says closing down sale. Anyway, here we are in Castle Street in Douglas. Go straight in, go to the jugular. And we're standing opposite, at night, the shop that proudly bears the name Kermode and Bignell. Up above, shoe shop, and it's a ground floor, there'll be a basement, then ground floor, first floor, second floor, and third floor. Quite a tall building. It's a building of Victorian period, early Victorian, probably 1840s maybe. Kermodes and Bignells, of course, they for a long time were on the other side of the road, right at the beginning of Castle Street, where it met Wellroad Hill.
100 years ago?
Well, it goes back further than that, in actual fact. In 1894, William Kermode, bootmaker, was in number 3. But if I go back to 1881, William Kermode was at 31 Chester Street, out behind. But now then, David, what can you remember in that shop? Yeah, there's 2 features in there which have stuck in my mind ever since I was a child.
I can't remember having even been in it, let alone remember anything.
They had this X-ray machine. And as a child, you'd go up a step and put your feet in this gap on this plywood veneer, which was curved round. And then up on the top was these sort of 2 holes that you looked down, and then they put the electric on, and it was an X-ray. You saw your toes, you saw them, the bones in your feet within the shape of the shoe. And I never
saw that.
Oh, right, and that was to tell you whether, of course, the shoes were too tight for you, and so on. What it did for your feet, I don't know. Probably everyone that you see hobbling around has had X-ray or gamma rays in there. And the other feature in there, spiral staircase.
Oh, right.
And of course, spiral staircases are not easy to go
They
up
are not,
when you've
no.
got your hands free. So to go up and then to have to come down carrying shoe boxes was not an easy task.
No.
What happened to them both? I think the X-ray machine disappeared long before they moved. Well, who knows where the spiral staircase, it may have gone in the demolition, it may have been taken out before the demolition.
Many of the most iconic buildings around the island have been designed by Ellis Brown Architects. Keep up with Ellis Brown today on Facebook or via ellisbrown.in.
Part of island life for 60 years. This is your Manx Radio.